Later this year, November 1st through 3rd to be exact, in Austin, Texas, we'll host the EntreArchitect Community Annual Meeting. It's the business conference for entrepreneur architects. In fact, it's the first ever live conference dedicated just to small firm entrepreneur architects. And even though November sounds like a long time from now, the conference will be here before you know it. So today, I'm kicking off a new live stream series to introduce you to all of the fantastic speakers that will be at the conference. And then later, we'll give you a little teaser about what their talks and workshops are. So, good afternoon. My name is Jeff Eccles. I'm the Director of Brand Strategy for EntreArchitect, the largest worldwide community of small firm architects. I'm also the host of Context and Clarity Live. And to kick off this series, today I'm joined by a friend of mine who's doing great work with small architecture firms. But I know that you'd rather hear from him instead of listening to me ramble on. So, hey, who are you and what do you do?
Hey, Jeff, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm Bryon McCartney, and I am the co-founder and chief creative strategist at ARCHMARK. We are a architecture marketing agency, so we specialize in helping architects with branding and marketing so that they can well, I'll save. I think you have another follow-up question here, so I don't want to go too deep.
Oh, that's fine, and it worries me a little bit that you had to think a little bit about your title, but that's
I
okay.
well, the thing is that I go by many titles. So one is Chief Idea Guy. That's been a popular title in the past,
Got it. Yep.
and then I never know because my wife and I, we founded this agency. So I'm always like co-founder, co-manager, co-partner. So I'm always like
Yep.
it's one of those.
Yeah. I get it. Well, either way, whatever your title is, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're a part of the EntreArchitect Community Annual Meeting. It'll be great to get together again in Austin, and
Yeah.
it's actually just a couple of months now. Um, when that'll happen at the beginning of November. You have a workshop as part of the conference, and so again, we'll get into that just a little bit here, and then about a month from now, we'll talk more about it. But you mentioned marketing for architects. Who's your ideal client?
Yeah, our ideal client typically, I mean, there's a couple of ideal clients, but our ideal client is typically a small firm architect, small architecture firm. Uh, I would say that the majority of our clients tend to be firm owners, architects who have been in business on their own or in their current entity for usually 5 to 10 years, and they're at a point in their career where they've been doing a lot of the stuff that they get through referrals and things like that,
Yep.
but they want to take it up a notch. They want to do the projects that they really dream about,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
projects that make them go, yeah, this is why I became an architect. And so what we try to do is help them first of all get very clear on their who they are, right? Like who's your
Right.
brand, and why are you doing this? Who do you do it for? All those important questions. We help translate that into a great web presence. So website, social media profiles, Google business profiles, and so forth. Make that message as clear and consistent as possible across those entities. And then, so we work in three phases actually. So we've got the
Hmm.
ideal client, and what we're really trying to do is help them grow their recognition, their reputation, and their relationships, so they can really attract their ideal clients and get those dream projects that they want.
Oh, that's great. I love that, and I love that idea of kind of getting them back to what they're really passionate about and
Yeah.
why they really do this. A few weeks ago on Context and Clarity Live, we had Eitan Sarfati, And he is co-founder of Swap, SWAPP, which is an AI-driven design platform. Super interesting conversation. And I know that when we bring up AI in architecture, there are some architects whose eyes get really big and they start to sweat a little bit and get a little panicky. Go, oh my gosh, is AI going to come in and replace us, or take over the role of the architect? But Aton, um, he said something that the reason I'm bringing it up, because I think it really kind of parallels what you just said.
Mhm.
He said, imagine having a tool that does the things that are necessary, but you don't have to do, right? You, the architect, the human being, you are not the one that has to do these things.
Yes.
And there's different versions of that, right? You could
Yeah.
outsource things and so on and so forth. But then he goes on to say, so that you can do the things. Remember back to architecture school and what you were really passionate about and what really drove you into this profession. These things take over that the things that can be taken over, so that you can get back to those things that you're passionate about, and those things um, that are really like you said, that are really the reason that you got into this profession, the reason that you do what you do.
Yeah, that
Um,
just real quick, that's a really AI is something that we talk a lot about in our industry as well, in marketing and
yeah.
branding.
Mhm.
A lot of new AI tools. It seems like there's 3 or 4 of them come out every month, that we gotta, like, oh, what's that new thing? I think that that's a really key point about AI, is that it's not a tool that's going to necessarily replace you or your thinking or whatever,
Right.
but if used in the right way, it can actually make it easier for you to do your work. And we actually use AI in our work, especially when it comes to SEO and rankings, helping to identify opportunities for new content, that sort of thing. AI is very powerful, and I'm really jazzed about seeing where it goes and where it goes for architects. I think
Yeah.
I think it can have a real key impact on architecture in the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Hey, if you just joined us out there, we're broadcasting live right now to Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube and Twitter. And I know there's a lot of you joining us from Twitch.
Oh yeah,
It's my
you can't
joke every
forget the
week. Yeah,
Twitchers.
our huge Twitch audience. Um, if you've got a question for Bryon, we're just doing an introduction right now. This is Bryon McCartney. He's co-founder of ARCHMARK, which is marketing for architects, and he's going to be a speaker at the EntreArchitect Community Annual Meeting, November 1st through 3rd in Austin, Texas. And so, as I said a few minutes ago, I'm starting this new live stream series. Don't worry, it's not going to become a daily thing like Context and Clarity, but I wanted to make sure that we introduce all of our speakers for the annual meeting, for the EntreArchitect Conference. I want to introduce all the speakers, and we'll come back in about a month and preview their talks. So today, I'm introducing Bryon McCartney to you. If you're part of the EntreArchitect community, if you're around architecture, especially small and medium-sized firms, you probably know Bryon already. But I wanted to make sure that we introduce Bryon. And if you're out there and you've got any questions, we've got a couple of minutes. We're not going to go real long on this, just a few more minutes. But if you've got a question, throw it into the chat wherever you are, and we'll see if we can address that question as we talk here. But you're talking about the fact that you're working with architects. Many of them are 5 years, 10 years in, and as you were describing that, I was thinking, my gosh, that's exactly right, because that's a key, probably a critical growth moment for a lot of firm owners. I think there are a lot of small firm owners that get to that point. And, is that the 7-year itch? Is that the
Yeah,
midlife
yeah.
crisis? Is it whatever? But it's, what am I going to do to grow this? What am I going to do to improve this? Are you working in specific geographies, or does that matter to you?
Mainly we're working in like primarily English-speaking countries,
Yeah, makes
mostly in
sense.
the U.S. Mostly in the U.S. For a variety of reasons. SEO, for example. We want to make sure that we're targeting the right search terms and so forth. So yeah, we're primarily working in. We've got clients in the U.S., clients in Canada, clients in now South Africa, the UK. I do have some coaching clients as well in Australia. So yeah, it's we're trying to cover the globe slowly, but we're not a huge firm where we take on a ton of clients. We usually, right now I think we have around 17 clients that we're currently working with
Okay.
directly, and it's a very hands-on. It's kind of a done for you approach. So there's a lot of work that goes on, a lot of ways that we're supporting our architects. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned done for you. Do you have different versions where you have a done with you and a done for you and maybe a consulting or
That's something.
advisory role?
Yeah, that's something. So we've been getting contacted by a lot of younger startups, and
Hmm.
when I say younger, I mean probably like more in their 40s, and
Well,
they're
young
just
firm, maybe
yeah,
rather than
young,
young
young, young,
person.
younger than our typical clients, but um, so they're younger in their process of building their firm, and we're now kind of looking at the ideas of, is there a program that we can develop that's a little bit more fine-tuned for their needs, and maybe focuses more on quick wins and
Mm.
establishing best practices rather than doing everything. Like right now we do quite a lot for our clients. So something
Yeah.
that's a little bit more scaled back, a little bit more like a teaching program as well, that helps them kind
Hmm.
of understand, like, hey, if I do this consistently, this will get me the results that I'm looking for. So yeah,
Yeah.
so we're getting to that point.
That's a nice segue. We've got Yoko joining us and also Jessica joining us. Yoko is in Alexandria, Virginia. Jessica's in LA, the city of angels. And I think that's a nice segue to Jessica's question. She says, do you have any tips for how new companies can set themselves up for marketing success from the jump?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think if you're new, uh, one of the things that I always say is that you got to start with the people you know, right? So if you have a network of even people that you went to school with, people that it depends how young you are, but maybe your parents were involved in the business community, or that sort of thing. Focus on the people you already know and are connected with, to try to establish, or help them understand what it is you do and do well, so that they're better able to say, "Hey, I know an architect," when somebody is talking about, uh, a project, or maybe they're at a party, and somebody says, "Yeah, we want to redo our kitchen and bath," or something like that. Then it's easier for them to say, "Oh yeah, yeah, I know somebody. There's somebody I'd love to introduce you to." I think starting with that as a basic, just we haven't done anything else. Definitely go to the people you know already. Make sure that they understand how to describe what you do as well. That's a key thing. Like, we get a lot of clients that, they get referrals, but they're not great referrals. They're not a good fit. And so just helping people understand, like, hey, this is what I'm looking for, and this is what I do. And it doesn't have to be like oh, I'm going to spam all my contacts. It could be just like, hey, wanted to reach out because we haven't been in touch, and I wanted to let you know what I'm doing. And that can be a really great way to start, I think.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Yoko has a question too, which I think is a nice pivot question that'll take us to our wrap up here momentarily. But Yoko asks, how much should a small firm budget for your services?
How much do you have? No, no, I'm joking.
Or
Here's what I would
so go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, here's what I would do. Here's what I would say to that is that, um, the amount is going to depend on the the uh, the progress you want to make with it, right? So, the more you spend, typically, the more you are able to do, the more channels you can cover. Here's what I recommend, and this is, I think, one of the biggest mistakes that we make when we start thinking about marketing is we think like, oh, we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to do that. No, focus on one thing, focus on one type of client. So if you're a residential designer, don't just say, hey, I design houses. Hey, I design houses for families who need to expand their existing homes, right? That's, you want to be specific about who you're talking to, and then your marketing can be specific for that audience. So then you're not spreading out your budget, you're focusing it on that one set, or that one group that you really want to work with. That's the easiest way to kind of, and then it's more a question of like, this question of like, how much should I budget? Typically, I think the Small Business Association says that, companies budget anywhere from, 3 to, or well, actually, I think it's even lower, 1.5% up to, maybe as much as 15 or 25. You got to figure out, like, in terms of what you're making, and then what your other expenditures are, how much of that do you want to go to marketing? Set a number, and then figure out what to do with that in a focused way so that you make the most of those dollars.
I think that's great advice as well. I know we've got some more folks and more questions coming in. We're going to have to wrap it up here momentarily, but Scott Thrift is joining us from San Francisco.
Hey,
Hi,
Scott.
Scott. Great
And
to have
Barry.
you with us.
Barry
B-
from Scotland.
Barry's joining us from Scotland. Cheers, Barry. Um, so let's just go ahead and jump to Barry's question here, and
Sure.
then we'll wrap it up. He says, "What's the minimum you could do to be effective?" This is a nice follow up to Yoko's question too. What's the minimum you could do to be effective, or what's the starting point for trying to figure out a marketing strategy? Which is also another good pivot to our wrap up question here.
Well, I think the minimum you could do to be effective, that's an interesting question. I think, from my point of view, I think one of the most effective things you can do is create great content for your website. Here's the thing: a lot of people focus on social media, and certainly, Adam Steiner, who's joining us, will certainly agree that social media can be a great place to develop an audience. But the problem with social media is that you have to grow an audience, and if you're not able to do that consistently and effectively over time, that audience, it can be a real challenge to do that with social media. What I like to do is to focus on content on your website that is, let's say, SEO optimized, search engine optimized, so that Google finds you and knows to direct people your way when they're searching for certain keywords. That kind of effort is really great, because if you write an article on, what to look for in a residential architect, or why you need an architect for a commercial project, if you're able to write effective content around the questions that your clients may already have, that's going to have longevity. And the content on your website, it has like a longer life cycle than, let's say, a tweet or a post on social media. So unless you're feeding social media, unless you're able to do that consistently, I would say focus on creating great content for your website.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. And you mentioned Adam Steiner, who is just up the interstate from me in Indiana. Hi,
Yes.
Adam. And Adam joined us on the ARCAST in Chicago, our podcast from the ARCAT booth on the expo floor at the AIA National Conference on Architecture. So, hey, Adam. Adam,
But
by the way, is a TikTok star. So
Yeah, I was
gonna
just
throw
gonna
that in
say
there.
you gotta give a shout out to Adam for he is rocking it on TikTok. He's got a great podcast as well. Everybody should, listen to if you're ever thinking about starting a podcast or whatever. I mean, yeah, definitely gotta give Adam some props.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So you're going to be back here in about a month for a
Mhm.
preview. And again, for those of you that have joined us since the beginning, the EntreArchitect Community Annual Meeting is coming up at the beginning of November, the 1st through 3rd of November. And so between now and then, what I wanted to do is bring to you all of the speakers that'll be at the conference, that'll be speaking at the conference. And so we're doing a series, two different talks. A very short talk, like we're doing right now with Bryon McCartney, just an intro. Here's Bryon, here's who he is, here's what he does, and then in about a month, Bryon will be back to preview the workshop that he's presenting. They're in Austin, Texas, in November. So I don't want to give away too much, but what's the title of your talk? And in a sentence or two or so, what will we take away from that talk?
So my talk is strategic planning for architects made simple, or something to that effect. I don't remember the
Yes,
exact wording, but
it's pretty close. Pretty close.
so here's the thing. I will admit that strategic planning is not the sexiest topic in the world, and it's something that not all of us really get excited about, but you really should. Um, Strategic planning has, for my business and for many of the architects that we work with, has been foundational in changing the trajectory of businesses. And so I'm going to present a short, there's only so much. I've got an hour and I had to beg Mark to give me an hour and a half. Like, like I really, like I had to, I mean, this was, I had to really work him on this one. So
It's a good thing you
hour and
read
a half.
Never Split the Difference by Chris
Yeah,
Voss.
exactly. Right.
That's what did it.
So I took his master class on masterclass.com too. I was
that was the tipping
watching.
point right there.
Yeah, I was watching everything. But I got an hour and a half at the event to teach a version of, we're going to do a condensed version of strategic planning. But anyone who comes to this presentation is also going to get access to a more the full banana, let's say. So we're going to give a preview of quarterly strategic planning in this session, and then you'll also have access to the annual strategic planning process. Strategic planning, if you're not familiar with it, it really is just about setting clear goals and clear direction in your business, understanding how we're measuring success so that we can move strategically towards the things that are going to have impact on our business. As architects, I know working with architects, most architects are focused on like, oh, I got all this client work to do. And we really have to, you ask me how much we should budget for marketing. Well, we should be budgeting probably 20 to 25% of our time on working on our own businesses, whether it's invoicing or whatever, budgeting, etc. But strategic planning should be a part of that 25%, and it will help you to set clear goals and clear ideas of how we're going to get to what we want in our business. So that's my little I don't know, that wasn't a little sentence, but that'll give you something.
There are
We'll
a
get
lot of
more into
commas and
it. We'll get more
semicolons in there.
into it. Yeah. We'll get more into it in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
next call. But
Exactly. In about a
yeah.
month, I don't have the exact date in front of me at the moment, but Bryon will be back to really give us a preview of that workshop that he'll be presenting at the EntreArchitect Community Annual Meeting. And like I said, I'm doing this series between now and the end of October, basically, because the annual meeting is November 1st through 3rd in Austin, Texas. And we're going to meet all of the speakers and get a preview of all of the speakers' talks so that you have some idea of what you're getting yourself into as you travel to Austin, Texas. And maybe you find somebody that can help you between now and then, or maybe you find somebody that you want to talk to and meet at the EntreArchitect Community Annual Meeting. So Bryon McCartney is the co-founder, chief creative strategist at ARCHMARK. He'll be talking about how to make strategic planning simple at the EntreArchitect Community Annual Meeting, Austin, Texas, November 1st through 3rd. More importantly, though, Bryon, will Kelly be there?
Kelly and Lucky, our
All
famous
right.
poodle, is going to be there. Art will be there, and yeah, we're gonna enjoy the days in Austin and get to see some familiar faces and reconnect with a lot of people that we really like and respect in this community. So
Excellent.
it'll be fun.
Excellent. I'll be looking forward to seeing all three of you at the beginning of November then.
Yeah, it's like
So
we show up and the dog gets all the attention. So it's
exactly. Exactly. Look, you got to look through some of the Instagram posts from Chicago. Graciela Correa brought her Frenchie, with the spike
oh yeah,
collar and everything. It's like, you know
oh
what? I
yeah,
could take a picture with you, but I'm going to take a picture with your dog. That's
it's all about the
that's the
dogs. That's
reality
right.
of it, right? All right. So if you own a small firm or you aspire to own a small firm, maybe open your own, or even if you work for a small architecture firm, go over to entrearchitect.com/annual meeting. Spell it out, smash it together like it's one word. Entrearchitect.com/annual meeting for more information about the conference. Again, it's the first ever live conference dedicated just to small firm entrepreneur architects. So check it out. I promise you won't be disappointed. You're meeting Bryon McCartney now. You're hearing a little bit about his workshop that he'll talk more about in a month, and that'll be great. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. We've got a great lineup. Go over to entrearchitect.com/annual meeting for all of the details, and keep your ear to the ground. We're going to have, like I said, we're going to have an introduction to all of the speakers and then a preview of all of the talks. So those will be coming probably hot and heavy for the next 2 months, essentially. So until then, I appreciate everybody that's watching this live and anybody that's watching the recording. Thank you as well. Feel free to reach out wherever it is that you're watching from. Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube or Twitter or Twitch. Just message me. Message Bryon if you were inspired. By what Bryon's saying. If you want to know more, just reach out to Bryon on LinkedIn or Facebook or any of these places. We're pretty easy to find as human beings and professionals on these platforms. So reach out to us. It'll be great to hear from you. Happy to answer any questions, and watch out for our next speaker introduction for the EntreArchitect Community Annual Meeting, November 1st through 3rd in Austin, Texas. Again, entrearchitect.com/annual meeting is the URL to get more information. Bryon, thanks a lot for spending a little bit of time with me today. Always great to see you, great to talk to you. And we'll be looking forward to our next conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jeff. I really appreciate it. And if anybody wants to connect with me, just look for me on social. It's Brilliant Bryon, Bryon. That's usually how you find me on social. Just search for Brilliant Bryon, one word, and you'll find me. But I'd love to connect with anybody watching. And if I can answer more questions, please let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. Look for Brilliant Bryon. You can ask him more about the backstory of that
Yeah.
that handle. But yeah, and we will be back, like I said, in about a month with a longer preview of Bryon's talk. So look forward to that, and get your questions ready because you can ask more questions then. So until then, appreciate all of you. Thanks for joining us for this conversation, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks, everybody.